So I had something happen to me this past weekend that's never happened to me, and I'm doing this sort of as a warning or give some people some forethought. I got a call from one of my agents who was out of the area and asked me if I'd show a property for him. So I contacted the person that had called on this one property and had told my one agent that he lived in McLean and that wasn't working with somebody. So in the course of the conversation, when I called this gentleman back, he said, well, he wasn't working with anybody, he wasn't married to them, so to speak, but it was a friend of his, and that he really wanted to see the property. So I made an appointment with the sellers, met and is our listing, went out there and went to meet the prospective buyer at the property. So he gets out, and I talked to him and introduced myself. And then I let him know that I'd like to see and take a picture of his driver's license for proof of identity. We immediately balked at that and then hemmed and hawed and said, well, maybe it's okay. So as we moved towards the house, I explained to him that I represented the seller. And he said, well, I don't know this information about real estate or what to do. And so I'm not really sure. But I really want to see the house, and my time is very valuable. And my friend who is helping me isn't able to come today, so that's why I called. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to ask you to sign a disclosure of unrepresented parties just to tell you, and it's a disclosure that lets you know that I work for the seller, and this is really a requirement in the state of Virginia. Well, again, he started hemming and hawing and saying, well, maybe this wasn't the house for him, and he could hear traffic on Davis Ford Road and all this other stuff, and meanwhile, he's telling me now that instead of McLean, where he told my agent he lives in Alexandria on King Street. And he's been trying to get away from this for 5 years. So I told him, well, he's really not going to be able to see the house. Come on in, sign the unrepresented parties disclosure, and then take a look at the house. I'm sure he'd find it, better than standing out there as far as the noise was concerned. And with that, he told me, well, I don't want to get into anything binding. I told him this was not binding. This was a disclosure. And, I really don't want I really don't want to show you my ID. And so we parted ways and off he went. The reason I'm saying this is just to my agents and other agents. Sometimes if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And especially if you're trying to, showing a property to someone that you may not know before, even though my clients were there, wanting to get the ID, wanting to get the photo ID. So let that be a warning to you. If you're going to show a property and whether it's occupied or vacant, you shouldn't just meet somebody out in a vacant property normally, get their ID. And the minute they don't want to show it to you, that's the time to say goodbye to them and to the problems that probably come with it.